And for those who are new, I wanted to give us a quick overview of what these masterclasses are all about. So these masterclasses cover one topic every week. I've got about 50 topics in screenwriting. To give you an idea what sort of things we've covered over the past months, we talked about the concept, how you write log lines, the major event or the inciting incident, or the call to adventure as we'll call it today. Working with theme, point of view is a big one. I talk about point of view a lot because it is critically important and it is gravely misunderstood. Not enough teachers talk about it, and most professional screenwriters I work with acknowledge that this is one of the key elements that can fail a screenplay. So the point of view. Scene writing, that should be scene writing, and writing action. Now, structural models, we've done that only a few weeks back, and some of you were there. And that was a really good introduction to today's class, as well as the follow-up masterclass we did on fractal structure. Now, those two are free, and they are on my YouTube channel. So if you want to brush up, feel free to go there and check out those two masterclasses, one on structure models in screenwriting and the other one on fractal structure. Now, if you were not there and you don't know what I'm talking about, let's do a quick recap of what you need to know about structure before we dive into the hero's journey today. Most of you will be familiar with the hero's journey and the 3-act structure. Now, the 3-act structure roughly represented looks a bit like this. Why do we have these structural models? Now, they are analytical, they're observational, they're descriptive, not prescriptive. What it means is it gives you an idea of how most stories are put together and what they look like when you experience them and how they feel. Not necessarily what the screenwriters used or did as they were writing the screenplays. Now, if you were to draw a tension graph, that is the experience of the viewer of a movie over the time of running, which is 2 hours, and you track their blood pressure and their breathing and the humidity on the skin, whether they sweat or not, that's what you do with a polygraph, right? You'd probably get a graph that looks similar to the stock market graph, which is a rising graph. So a great film has a rising tension throughout with peaks and troughs. Now, if you then identify where the greatest peaks and troughs are, you'll find that this is roughly in the same vicinity on average for most movies. Now, if we collapse that onto a timeline, we end up with something like an 8-sequence structure. I didn't come up with that. That credit goes to Paul Golino, and I'm going to quote Golino a few times. I highly recommend his book, which is Screenwriting, the Sequence Approach. One of the best books on screenwriting that's currently available. Also essential reading is obviously Chris Vogler's The Writer's Journey. And if you read the Writer's Journey, you should do that in conjunction with watching movies and trying to analyze them. And in that respect, this book by Stuart Wojtyla called Myth and the Movies is a great companion as well. So this is the structure that we will be following today, and most of this masterclass is going to be clips. It's going to be film segments that illustrate where we are in that journey, in that timeline. If you did my masterclass on structure, you may remember this one, where the red indicates an event. That's something that happens to the main character, a major event happening to the hero. In this case, on the broad timeline, we call that the call to adventure or the inciting incident. And then the green indicates where most of the action is, as in the character responding to that event through action. There seems to be nothing across sequences A and B. Now, that's just for the sake of representation, because if you were to look at what is happening there, we can simplify that by saying there's mostly action leading into a major event at the end of that first sequence. Which event that is, we'll come back to as we go into the detail of our clips. But really, you could say, and obviously everything is in some way simplifying and generalizing. You can't get around it because every film is ultimately unique, but we do see these patterns. If you were to look at that pattern in sequence A, where you have action leading into a climactic event, that's essentially what you're going to have over most of the film's timeline. So we're going to have that 7 times, because the 8th time we don't have that major event at the end. Although there are films that do it for effect, and The Incredibles is one that if I had enough time, I would certainly show that to you. But usually I take a full day to go through the clips that I like to show in the context of the hero's journey. So today I had to be, more selective. Sequence A. What is sequence A all about? I'd say it's about showing the character's strength and weakness. We're talking about the hero. And for most of the examples here, we'll have a single protagonist. I will show a few examples where we have more than one. And that complicates matters. And if you're a beginning screenwriter, I wouldn't recommend to go there until you master the single protagonist journey. You prepare your call to adventure. And I think this is a really important one. It's also underestimated. You are using that first sequence to set up everything you need to make that call to adventure as impactful as possible. Ultimately, everything in your script needs to serve a purpose. And to me, the main purpose of sequence A is to really make it clear to the audience that what's going to happen at the end of that sequence is going to be really important. It's going to be a really big deal to our hero. In sequence A, we also introduce what we call the ordinary world. That's the normal world of our character before they go into this journey of change. And if the writing works, if the film works, usually at the end, the world may have changed a bit, at least from the perspective, from the POV of our main character. I'm going to talk about the energy in these stages, because I think that is really important. The energy of a sequence has an impact on how the audience experiences it. And film is all about emotion. The emotion the audience goes through as they watch the film. I say film, I don't say TV. Now, much of what I say does also apply to television, but it's much more difficult to apply the 8 sequence structure to television, because the sequences are 10 to 15 minutes. In television, that equates to an act. So when you have a 1-hour TV program, usually you have 4 acts, and those are rarely subdivided further. So you'd say we have 8 sequences in feature film and 4 acts in a 1-hour TV drama. So energy is something I'll be talking about a lot. In that first sequence, the energy is one of fragile equilibrium. The hero is getting by. They're not happy. There's something in their lives that needs to be changed, that they need to address. And the end of sequence A in my books is always the call to adventure. There's always a major event that happens to our character that pushes them onto their journey, that pushes them to act. They don't act immediately, or they don't act in the appropriate way immediately. They don't take decisive action, as we will see in a minute. But at least there is the motivation. And that's why this call to adventure is so important. It provides the motivation for the action in the rest of the film. The first clip I'm going to show is from a film you've all seen. I hope you at least all know. It's A New Hope. It's Star Wars Episode 4. And the clip I'll show is not one that is shared a lot, because it is in that setup phase. And what it does here, the function of this scene, is to set up that fragile equilibrium. The fact that Luke Skywalker is not happy and he's waiting for something to happen. This is a great example of a scene that sets us up for the call to adventure. When that call then happens, we understand how important it is to Luke and why he needs to act upon it. So here's that scene.
I think those new droids are going to work out fine. In fact, I also thinking about our agreement, about me staying on another season. And if these new droids do work out, I want to transmit my application to the Academy this year.
You mean the next semester before the harvest?
Sure, there's more than enough droids.
Harvest is when I need you the most. Only 1 season more. This year we'll make enough on the harvest that I'll be able to hire some more hands, and then you can go to the Academy next year. You must understand I need you here, Luke.
But it's a whole nother year.
Look, it's only 1 more season.
Yeah, that's what she said when Biggs and Tank left.
Where are you going?
Looks like I'm going nowhere. I have to go finish cleaning those droids.
Oh, and he can't stay here forever. Most of his friends have gone. It means so much to him.
Luke is not happy, obviously, and he needs to join the rebel force. And this scene indicates that. Now later, the actual call to adventure, which I won't have in this class, but which again you all know, is the scene in which he sees the hologram, the plea from Princess Leia, where she calls out for help. That's his prompt, that's his catalyst. And then there's a time of refusal, and that we'll get into for our next sequence. But first, Jaws, another great example of a movie that you should watch for structure. It's a fantastic structural exercise. In this scene, we see Chief Brody in the kitchen. We see a little bit about his character, and then the call comes in, the phone call that will indicate what's up for change.
Mom, I got cut. I got hit by a vampire.
You guys were playing on those swings. Those swings are dangerous. Stay off there. I haven't fixed them yet.
I think you're gonna live, but it's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah?
Can I go swimming?
Yeah, but let me clean this thing off first.
What do they usually do?
I
Wash
just
up
want to
or
make sure you don't
float
go
or
past
what?
the jetty. You can.
No.
Can I hang around
Keep
together?
there.
Does it
Keep
hurt you?
there. I'll be out in about
Yeah, not too far. Not like you did last week.
15, 20 minutes. All right?
I'll dry you off.
Okay.
Okay, go on. Get a Band-Aid.
Gotta go. Season hasn't started. Nobody's even here yet.
Listen, Chief, be careful, will you?
In this town? Hey!
Wait a minute. Get on. I want my cup back.
You get it!
Okay. Wait a minute. Bye.
There's a few reasons why I wanted to show you this clip. First of all, we see Chief Brody not taking responsibility. His son comes in from playing on the swings, his hands are bleeding, and he says, the swings are dangerous, I told you. And that's a pattern. He always tells people not to do this, not to do that when some things are dangerous. But he doesn't take responsibility. He doesn't change things. He doesn't fix the problem. In Jaws, the exact same thing. For half of the film, he's telling the people not to go into the water. It's not until the second half of the film that he actually does something about it. So the midpoint reversal brings that awareness and changes his actions. I'm going to skip the next clip, which was from the film Lion, which is very simple, an Indian boy who gets lost and then needs to get back home. It is his moment of realization when he's far away from home, in this case 1,600 kilometers, that the film really starts. That's the call to adventure. This one you've probably seen. It's a really simple one from the film Inception, where Dom Cobb gets the mission brought to him.
Hey, Mr. Cobb. How would you like to go home? To America? To your children?
Can't fix that. No one can.
Just like Inception.
Cobb, come on. How complex is the idea?
Simple enough.
No idea is simple when you need to plant it in somebody else's mind.
My main competitor is an old man in poor health. His son will soon inherit control of the corporation. I need him to decide to break up his father's empire.
God, we should walk away from this. Hold on. If I were to do this, if I even could do it, I'd need a guarantee. How do I know you can deliver?
You don't. But I can. So, do you want to take a leap of faith? Or become an old man filled with regret, waiting to die alone? Assemble a team, Mr. Cobb, and choose your people more wisely.
After Chief Brody and Jaws got the call, he drove off in his car, and after Dom Cobb gets his call to adventure, Saito takes off in the helicopter. To me, those are images of thresholds. After important moments in a film, often we see motion, we see movement. And I like to say that whenever we see movement in a film, there needs to be that motivation. Something important needs to have happened, so the hero moves forward to a next stage, even if it is visualized through a different character here, Sato. But Cobb is still traveling, is at this airport. At this particular point in time, we're at the end of sequence A, we are now catapulted into the story. So there is an opportunity to break through that fragile equilibrium that I spoke about. It's not always equally clear where that point is. Even in super successful films, and the one we're going to look at next is Avatar, it's not always 100% clear where the call to adventure in the film really is. We need to look at what the impact is on the character and how that leads to the final outcome of the film. In Avatar, I believe that the call to adventure is his first experience, Jake's first experience in the Avatar body, because that ultimately motivates his actions and his final choices in the film. Let's have a look what that looks like.
Hey guys. Hey.
It's okay, I'll get him.
Jake, you have to come
Jake!
back.
Jake! Excuse me.
Hello. Sorry.
Come on! Jake! We're not supposed to be running!
Oh, jeez. Sorry.
Watch it!
Hey, Marine.
Grace?
Well, who'd you expect, numbnuts? Think fast. Motor control's looking good.
He's loving it. He's loving this experience. And if you were unsure whether this was really an event happening to our main character, well, Cameron put that shot in there of Jake in the pod with the eyes moving. That indicates that this is happening to him. You know, it looks as if it is something he doesn't take active part in. It happens to him and he experiences the avatar body for the first time and he loves it. And ultimately that will lead to his final decision in his life. Then we go to Gravity, what I consider a very successful film. It's not one of my favorite, but it's a film that is worthy of study because it's so well made. In sequence A, we see Ryan, played by Sandra Bullock, at work, which is her ordinary world. And then there's the call to adventure. Something goes wrong.
Explorer, this is Houston.
Go ahead, Houston.
Mission abort. Repeat. Mission abort. Initiate emergency disconnect from Hubble. Begin re-entry procedure. ISS initiate emergency evacuation.
Copy all, Houston, and in work. Matt, immediate return to Explorer. Repeat. Immediate return to Explorer.
Copy. Explorer. Prep airlock.
Airlock engaged. Ready to receive.
How long are these sequences? It depends. It depends on the film. It depends on the requirements of the story. It also depends on where in the story you are. Some sequences are longer than others. On average, it's safe to say that most sequences lie between 10 and 15 minutes. In Gravity, it takes 10 minutes to get to this point where the call to adventure kicks in. Another film that we're going to follow a little bit more closely in this class is Toy Story 2. It's a wonderful film. It's a little bit more complex because it has 2 points of view. On the one hand, there's Woody. The other is Buzz. The most active character is not Woody because everything happens to Woody on the big picture level. And Buzz and his team of toys are there to save Woody. Now, when the main thing happens, when the major event, the call to adventure happens, everybody is witnessing this. It happens to Woody, but Buzz and the toys are watching and everybody realizes something really important, something bad has happened.
Oh no.
Andy, let's go. Molly's already in her car seat.
But Mom, Woody's arm ripped.
Oh no. Maybe we can fix him on the way.
No, just leave him.
I'm sorry, honey, but you know, toys don't last forever.
What happened?
Woody's been shelved.
Andy!
Woody?
Woody? Honey, are you okay?
He clearly is not. Mostly these calls to adventure are negative experiences. They're not positive opportunities, although there are films where it feels like it's a positive opportunity. You could argue that in Inception, Dom Cobb's opportunity to see his children again is positive. You could argue that in Avatar, Jake running and feeling being alive again, you could argue that that is a positive opportunity. But mostly it is something that cuts into the ordinary life of the hero and they don't like it. Just the way you just saw in Toy Story 2. Just the way you see it in, Blade Runner. I had that clip yesterday where Deckard is arrested. He was eating noodles and he's being arrested. He doesn't like that. In Groundhog Day, Phil Connors is stuck in this recurring day. He doesn't like that. So mostly the calls to adventure are negative. The reason I'm focusing on the end of the sequences here is that's what you build towards as a writer. You build climaxes. You need to deliver a big moment every 10 to 15 minutes because that's what people remember. And everything in between is built up, is set up to make that experience work. Let's go into the second sequence. That's sequence B. It's the sequence that we call, or in the hero's journey, we call the refusal of the call. I like to call it the think phase. It's where the hero needs to figure out what to do after that major event that just happened. So the refusal in the hero's journey. Sometimes we also have a meeting with a mentor in this stage somewhere. The energy of this stage is one of doubt, of self-doubt often, hesitation, and that's all before the decision is made to act. Often at the end of this sequence, we'll have another traumatic event, sometimes even an event that is worse than the one we saw at the call to adventure. And then at the end of the sequence, we see with that traumatic event, the hero gets a final nudge to ultimately do what they need to do.
Force their cooperation or hammer them hard if they won't.
Am I still with Augustine?
On paper.
You walk like one of her science pukes. You quack like one.
But you report to me. Can you do that for me, son?
Hell yeah, sir.
Well, all right then.
Son, I take care of my own.
You get me what I need, I'll see to it you get your legs back when you rotate home. Your real legs.
That sounds real good, sir.
Now, more than 11 years old, but still strong Avatar. The reason I go back to that film a lot is that there are not very many films that overtook the popularity and the box office success of Avatar since then. Most of those are Marvel movies, which means they are based on pre-existing IP. They're not original stories. They're not stories that you can write or will write. So Avatar was an original story, although you can argue about the originality of the structure, but in that respect, nothing is original. It is a really, really powerful film to analyze and to study. So I recommend you do that. We'll go to Die Hard now, which remains a classic. People rewatch it every year, and it's still strong. The call to adventure in Die Hard is when John McClane sees Gruber and his men enter the building and take people hostage at that Christmas party. The character you see here is Takagi. He is the CEO, and we're now heading towards the end of the second sequence. When McClane saw Gruber take these hostages, he didn't immediately intervene. He let things happen and he was thinking, and he still hadn't come up with a solution. And now this happens at the end of this second sequence, sequence B. Now he witnesses something that makes him realize that he must act.
1, 2, 3.
I don't know it, I'm telling you. Get on the jet to Tokyo and ask the chairman. I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me.
Okay.
Another traumatic event in Star Wars A New Hope. At the end of sequence B, Luke Skywalker finds his uncle and auntie dead.
You'd have been killed too, and the droids would now be in the hands of the Empire.
I want to come with you to Alderaan. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
So that was the final nudge Luke Skywalker needed, a traumatic event, and he's in the presence of his mentor here, Obi-Wan. The mentor is often there when the hero leaves the ordinary world, goes into the special world. We saw the scene with Jake and the Colonel, where the Colonel gave instructions to Jake, and we saw the goal formulated, so the goal for the film, both in Avatar and to a degree here in Star Wars as well. So he's going to join the Jedi forces. Mentors often accompany our hero when they transition into the special world. We call that the threshold. So this shot you see here with this hovercraft, they're traveling to the Mos Eisley bar, and from there they go into deep space. It's a geographic transitioning into Act 2. The same happens in low-budget films. One of my favorite low-budget films of the past few decades now is Frozen River, a Sundance film made for only $400,000. And it shows that the film director here understood the importance of the end of sequence B, the importance of the transitioning into Act 2. And relatively a significant chunk of money was spent on this shot when they didn't have drones yet and you needed to use a crane. And cranes were very expensive, still are, if you need to hire them for the day.
This is so fucking stupid.
It's a story of a mother, a racist mother, who has to smuggle people across this river into the Indian reservation. And next to her is her mentor in the car. And that mentor is a Native American woman. You see the lingering shot indicating this is a big moment for our hero. She's crossing a threshold. She's literally crossing a threshold, but also metaphorically into that special world. We're going to Toy Story 2 now, where at the end of sequence B, Woody is taken away. We saw that in a mini version in our fractal structure class, where we saw a Wheezy being taken away, and that was witnessed by Woody. Here, Woody is now taken away. It's witnessed by Buzz. Buzz tries to stay with him, but fails, and there's separation. Again, at the end of sequence B, we see Woody disappear. It's a threshold moment. And now Buzz is set up as the hero for this film. He needs to go and save Woody.
Why would someone steal Woody?
End of sequence B. Often there is a scene or a shot that bookends or underscores the fact that we are at an important juncture for the film. The example I'm going to give you now is from a somewhat older film, Sunset Boulevard, the Billy Wilder written and directed. And we see Gillis, you may remember him from our pitching class last week, Gillis witnessing the burial of a monkey in the house of this the actress whose glory is long gone.
was all very queer. But queerer things were yet to come.
So go to black. It's a wipe. It's a vertical wipe that indicates the end of an act. And there's also some anticipation, queer things to come. So that is setting some suspense. That brings us into sequence C, but I believe there was a question. So let's pause momentarily, see if anyone else had any questions. Anthony, you had a question.
Back in relation to Inception, I found it interesting because the agent character who gives the call to adventure to Leonardo DiCaprio, he states, "You'll become an old man with regrets." I found that interesting because he used that description because towards the end, the Asian character ends up in that state. Like, he's an old man, looks like he's got regrets. And so why was there a symbolic reason why the guy who gave the challenge, the call to adventure, ended up in exactly that state?
Yeah, nice. Well, you've observed that very well. That's an element of irony and it's subtext. That is a subtextual reference to later in the film. That often happens. In Toy Story 2, we have at some point Woody telling Buzz that he is a toy. He's not a space ranger, and that is used against him by Buzz at the end of the story as well. So that too is subtext. Often that goes towards a theme. I'm not sure if that's the case in Inception, but it's definitely it's a nice setup. Yeah, well spotted. Well done.
All right, weird.
Any other questions by anyone at this stage? No? Then let's keep going. We're going into Act 2 now, Sequence C. Let me share the screen again. The second act is we'll see the hero make their first attempt at solving the problem and doing the action, whichever action was triggered by the major event. We have an introduction to the new world. We'll be introduced to allies and enemies, and much of the challenge for the hero is to distinguish between allies and enemies. And again, it doesn't matter what sort of story you're telling. In that low-budget art house film that we just saw a clip from, Frozen River, as soon as our heroine has crossed the river, she's confronting exactly that. Someone approaches the car and she doesn't quite know whether to trust that person, but that's what her mentor is there for. In Star Wars, we go into the cantina on Mos Eisley. Luke Skywalker doesn't know who to trust, but that's what Obi-Wan is there for. So distinguish between allies and enemies. The energy of this third sequence is one of there's still denial. There's absolute denial, but in the sense that the hero is acting in their own ways. But there is energy and there is fun and games. It's naive in a sense. So the hero acts by their own ways, and it's not until the midpoint reversal that they become more aware and the denial kind of goes away. The final nudge, that was from the previous stage. I'm sorry, that was an error. This is an establishing shot in Avatar, and you'll often have that when we go into sequence C to bookend what we've just had. It could be a threshold, could also be an establishing shot that gives us a breather. The first moments in Avatar sequence C look like this. Often that new world comes across threatening to the hero. Hero doesn't know whether these creatures can kill him. He doesn't know how to deal with it. So he's learning new skills. It's a new environment, and he will have a new ally very soon to deal with this, and that will then become his love interest, Neytiri. Often at the beginning of that sequence C, as I said, the hero will start performing the action that they were hired for, so to speak. We see that in Arrival, where our lead, played by Amy Adams, is called in to communicate with the aliens. And so the threshold is going to that place, and sequence C starts with the first trip up into the spaceship to have the first conversation with the aliens. Same in Die Hard, John McClane now needs to deal with the situation rather than sit and wait. And he needs to come up with possible solutions. Those solutions are rarely successful in the first half of Act 2. And here's his first attempt at dealing with Gruber.
How the fuck didn't you stop him, John? Because then you'd be dead too, asshole. Think, goddammit, think.
Got a fire alarm.
In Gravity, the goal was to reach the International Space Station and then go into the Soyuz capsule and then use the Soyuz to return to Earth. That is sequence C in Gravity. She is still together with her pal Matt, played by George Clooney. And there is definitely a sense of fun and games because the two get along really well, but remarkably and surprisingly, this sequence C doesn't end very well, in the sense that this is where she has to let go of Matt.
Ryan, let go.
No, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere.
It's not up to you.
No. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. No. Please don't do this.
You're gonna make it, Ryan.
No!
It's a surprisingly powerful ending to this sequence. Sequence C doesn't usually have a memorable moment, but in this film, which is about 92 minutes, I think, this happens at around 32 minutes, so very early. You would expect this to happen more towards the end of sequence D or the midpoint reversal. Now, Gravity does have quite a spectacular and suspenseful end of sequence D as well. But the letting go of the hero, that usually happens around the midpoint reversal. In this case, I think it is a little bit earlier. So sequence D, what happens in sequence D? It's really a matter of trying harder. The hero doesn't change their ways. They're just doing the same thing, but they push harder. We'll see repeated failure. So if sequence C didn't lead to success, sequence D may have a false victory first, but that then reverses at the end with the midpoint reversal, and there'll be a second failure. The energy is anger. So where the energy of C was positive, often in D we just try harder, doing the same, and often there's a little bit of anger in there. And the end of that sequence often becomes a midpoint reversal. Midpoint reversal can be a moment. It can become also its own sequence. In that case, you would have a 9-sequence structure where you would replace sequence E. I have done quite a few videos on midpoint reversal. There's a masterclass about it. There'll be a masterclass about this next year again, and you'll find a few videos on my YouTube channel on it as well. So let's look at what this sequence E looks like in the movies. In Toy Story 2, now they go towards, sorry, it is sequence D. I'm confused here. Yes, we're going towards the midpoint reversal. In Toy Story 2, they go towards the toy store. And in Toy Story 2, the interesting thing is that most of the screen time is with Woody, but Woody doesn't do much. He goes through his inner journey more than an outer journey. And it's the toys that have the outer journey. So for the toys, it's mostly about getting to Woody, where Woody comes to this insight of what it means to be a toy. And we cut between the two. If we just followed Woody, it would have been a fairly boring, static, dramatic, talky, but it becomes more interesting by cross-cutting with the physical, geographical journey of the toys. In Die Hard, we had John McClane try the fire alarm in sequence C. That didn't work, so now in sequence D, he's trying something else.
Mayday, mayday, anyone copying Channel 9? Terrorists have seized the Nakatomi building and are holding at least 30 people hostage. I repeat, unknown number of terrorists, 6 or more armed with automatic weapons at Nakatomi Plaza, Century City.
Where's the best place to transmit?
Somebody answer me, goddammit!
The roof. Go, go!
It's the same address as that fire signal.
I'll handle it. Attention, whoever you are, this channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
No fucking shit, lady! Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Tension keeps rising. And this is a really good example of a powerful villain who is smart, who thinks ahead, and who puts pressure on our hero. So in sequence C, the first sequence of Act 2, John McClane tried getting the attention from the outside world by triggering the fire alarm. Sequence D, there's a new approach, and you see he's getting angry. This is the radio. So he's using the radio to try and communicate with the police. But again, this will not work immediately. And then we enter the midpoint reversal territory. In Gravity, by the way, the sequence D is about getting into the Soyuz capsule and then realize that it is entangled with the space station in the next sequence. All sequence E is where she needs to go out again and then disentangle so she can descend with the Soyuz. Midpoint reversal, as I said, that's something for you to study based on the masterclasses I did before and the YouTube videos. But often there are famous moments in Die Hard. It is the welcome to the party pal line when finally the police now take him seriously and they come on board and they'll enter the building, or at least try and enter the building. In Groundhog Day, Phil Connors gets his first kiss. The midpoint reversal there is that kiss comes with an immediate slap after that. This is a shot from Midsommar. If you have seen Midsommar, you know what happens at the midpoint reversal of this film. It has to do with a rock, and it has to do with a falling motion, which we often have in films around the midpoint reversal. There's often a jump off a cliff or a dive off a cliff. In Toy Story 2, things get really complicated. At the midpoint reversal, there's an added point of view because the real Buzz Lightyear swapped for a fake Buzz Lightyear. It's really, really smart because obviously it plays into the theme. And just as the toys catch up with Woody, there's another reversal. Woody now doesn't want to return anymore. So wonderful, unsuspected reversal. So we've made it now into the second half of the film. We've got about 13 minutes left in this masterclass, and let's spend some time on sequence E. What happens in sequence E? Sequence E, everything is different. We've had our reversal. Everything's changed. The world has changed. The characters have changed. We have shape-shifting characters where where mentors can become shadows, and the world becomes even more hostile. What happens in this sequence? Often the hero regroups, so they have to take in the blow of that midpoint reversal. Usually that is not good news. There's increased awareness of their own character flaw, and they now know that they need to change that behavior in order to be successful. There is a metaphorical approach to the cave. What does that mean? In psychological terms, it means preparing to face death. Get ready to sacrifice everything, including your life. That is what the approach to the cave means. metaphorically and psychologically. But in film, it's also a geographic approach to the cave. We literally go to that place where this scene is going to take place. The energy now is much darker. The first half may be energetic and fun. We have the fun and games sequences. In the second half of the film, this is going to be more serious. And even comedies get serious. And I'll show you in a minute with Groundhog Day. The end of this sequence E leads us to the cave, the location of the cave, and also the mindset of the ordeal. So it's a catalyst for the cave. It's a catalyst, is an event that leads into the cave. Things get darker. In Die Hard, it's that scene where Ellis is sacrificed. Ellis is this shapeshifter who's part of the guests of the party. He's a colleague of Holly, of McClane's wife, but he betrays everyone. He betrays John and then has to pay the price with his life. And here is how Groundhog Day opens sequence E, the second half of the film. Not as much fun as it was previously.
Okay, campers, rise and shine. And don't forget your booties, because it's cold out there today. It's cold out there every day.
So this is that character, Ellis from Die Hard, who at the end of sequence E pays the price. In Gravity, the International Space Station is destroyed as a result of that disentangling exercise. And then we go into sequence F. F4, beep. This is where things turn really dark. It's what we call the inmost cave. The ordeal takes place. The ordeal is the worst test for our hero in traditional screenwriting terminology. It's the crisis. We get a sample of death. It's also the stage in which the hero completes their transformation. They come to the complete insight and redemption, and they change their behavior. They're willing to do whatever it takes and never change back to their old self. Now, before they achieve that, there is mostly an energy of despair and depression. You can map the stages D, E, actually C, D, E, and F right on top of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. And at the end of the sequence, we have a sparkle of hope, the seizing of the sword. It's a metaphorical seizing of the sword. It's what the hero needs to ultimately defeat the shadow. It's the tool, it's the weapon or the information they need. In that sequence in Groundhog Day, we see Phil Connors do the right thing. He is now a changed man. He's honest. He takes care of people. And here he's trying to save the old man. But unfortunately, he is tested because the old man doesn't survive. And what I mean when I say he's tested, so it'd be easy for Phil Connors to say, well, clearly this new approach doesn't work. I'm going to go back to my old ways because that was fun. But he doesn't. He remains the newborn, honest, changed man that we saw him be after the midpoint reversal. I'm going to play this clip from Die Hard because it's quite remarkable. Die Hard is a film full of energy and irony and quips and one-liners, and we remember McClane as a strong character. At times he even resembles Rambo, but here in this scene he seems weak.
Tell her that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me. She's heard me say I love you 1,000 times. She never heard me say I'm sorry. And I want you to tell her that, Al. I want you to tell her that John said that he was sorry. Okay? You got that, man?
Yeah, I got it, John. But you can tell her that yourself. You just watch your ass and you'll make it out of there. You hear me?
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt there. He seems weak, but it is in this moment that he finds his greatest strength. And he does redeem himself, and this is where he finds the strength to do the right thing at the end of the film, which I will show you in a few minutes. Often the mentor comes back. We saw the Black Cop Powell give McClane his final words of wisdom and inspiration. That often happens at this particular point. We call it the divine intervention or the supernatural aid. In Arrival, it is Amy Adams' character's clue from her mentor. And I won't spoil it if you haven't seen the film yet. But I'll show it for those who've seen the film will remember. She gets a critical piece of information from this dialogue, at which point she was getting desperate. It looked like war was inevitable. And here she gets some piece of information that will then lead her into Act 3.
The only reason why I'm here is to meet you in person.
Me? Well, I'm flattered. Thank you.
Now, 18 months ago, you did something remarkable. Something not even my superior has done. And when she realizes what that is, she has what she needs in order to do the right thing and end the impasse that they had achieved. In Gravity, our hero Ryan is visited again by her mentor, who then appears as a supernatural being. And that is at this particular point in the story. Again, when she's desperate. And not only is there no fuel now, she's also rapidly running out of oxygen. And look, she's giving up. She's preparing to die.
Sing me to sleep and I'll sleep. Keep singing and singing and singing.
She's already accepted that the spacecraft will be her coffin. And then her mentor reappears for the final message that will then give her the hope to push further and to go into Act 3. Similar in Avatar, they are desperate, they're locked up, and one of the enemies now shapeshifts and becomes an ally. You could say it's a similar knock on the door by the character of Trudy.
What's going on, brother? Long time no see.
Hey.
Personally, I don't feel these tree-hugging traitors deserve steak.
Make it steak? That's bullshit. Let me see that.
Yeah, you know what that is. Down.
Trudy!
All the way down. Max!
And we feel the energy pick up as they leave the prison, they leave sequence F, they leave the second act to go into the third act. So you can feel the energy pick up, and now we're in the energy of the third act and sequence G. In sequence G, we have what we call the resurrection in the hero's journey. It's the final confrontation with the shadow in traditional story terms. It's also the proof of transformation. It's in the action of that final scene that we can see the heroes learn things and will take a different approach. There's an energy of confidence and determination, and the sequence ends in the resolution. So the main tension is resolved. Let's have a look at a quick montage of 3 films: Groundhog Day, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and Toy Story 2. This is what that moment looks like in each of those 3 films.
But standing here among the people of Punxsutawney and basking in the warmth of their hearths and hearts, I couldn't imagine a better fate than a long and lustrous winter. From Punxsutawney, it's Phil Connors. So long. Nice speech, Phil. Very nice.
Thank you.
You like magic? Just trust me.
Just do the fucking trick, man.
okay?
What the fuck?
So now Dixon takes evidence in the third act to then do something about the case that had been neglected by his office previously. And this is the scene from Toy Story 2 that ends the film.
Buzz! Buzz! Get behind the tires! Jesse! Let go of the plane!
What, are you crazy?
Just pretend it's the final episode of Woody's Roundup!
But it was canceled! We never saw if you made it!
Well, then let's find out together!
We did it! We did it! We did it!
Nice roping, cowboy!
That was definitely Woody's finest hour!
Your hat, partner. Let's go home.
What I wanted to show you with that final shot from Toy Story 2 was where Woody and Buzz defeat the enemy and everybody's reunited. What would you expect otherwise from the end of a Toy Story movie? So the happily ever after follows the conclusion, follows the resolution, and that's sequence H. So we have what we call the return with the elixir in the hero's journey. That's a sense of resolution. The hero now becomes a mentor. So the hero is going to pass on what they have learned and spread it in the community. There's an energy of relief and joy. It's that sense you want when you walk out of the movie theater. It's the riding into the sunset. And I do have a quick montage for this one as well. We're going back to Three Billboards, and I just give you the introduction to that scene. The whole film has been the conflict between the mother of this young woman who was raped and killed, and then the police officer who didn't really care for that, didn't do anything about it, and has to pay the price. They are formidable adversaries throughout the film. Their conflict is resolved at the end, and you'll see that. We'll also have Die Hard, the scene where John McClane redeems himself in that final scene, and then Toy Story 2. We also have the final moments for Woody and the toys.
Dixon?
Yeah.
Are you sure about this?
By killing this guy. Not really. You?
Not really. I guess we can decide along the way.
Alan's my wife, Holly. Holly Gennaro.
Holly McClane.
Hello, Holly. You got yourself a good man. You take good care of him.
Hey, Woody. Woody? Oh, wow, new toys. Cool. Thanks, Mom.
By the way, guys, here's a nice overview, and all you need to do is send me an email. Just respond to one of the emails I sent you over the past few days, and I will send you an electronic file with this overview of the 3 acts and the 8 sequences with the hero's journey labels. And as a bonus, I'll give you the same with my own labels. They're slightly different, but they are a bit more neutral. If you're not 100% into the hero's journey, this is more a layman's way of approaching those 8 sequences. All right, thanks for joining, guys. Consider joining our masterclasses as of next week. We start a new course. And Marina, thank you for asking a question, because you reminded me of the fact that you were one of the very early people, one of the first to join the immersion screenwriting course. And this class, absolutely, you were one of those champions, the warriors who did the 6-month, the marathon version.
It was awesome, and it forever changed my approach to writing in so many ways.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Now, when you did the course, it still ran for 6 months. Today, it's only about 50 days, and the 7 weeks run in parallel with these masterclasses. So if anyone is interested in trying on the immersion screenwriting course, check out our page. And if you join us for $199 US, you will be back next week because the masterclasses are included in the fee for the immersion screenwriting course. All right, enough plugs for today.
I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Marina. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you again here sometime at the same time, the same place. Cheers. See you later.